You have 17 browser tabs open right now. Not because you're disorganized, because your brain literally cannot stop being interested in things. One week you're deep into astrophysics, next week you're learning Portuguese, then sourdough, then urban planning. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, someone looked at you and said, "You really need to focus." And part of you believed them. That ends today. Here's what nobody tells you about people like you. You don't just have hobbies, you have obsessions that expire. You go from 0 to expert level in about 3 weeks, feel the dopamine plateau, and then your brain quietly moves onto the next thing, leaving behind a graveyard of half-finished Udemy courses and 3 different journal entries that all start with, "I've been thinking a lot." Lately sound familiar? Good, because that's not a bug, that's your operating system running exactly as designed. Psychologists have a name for people who pursue multiple, unrelated interests across their lifetime. They're called multipotentialites, a term coined by career coach Emily Wapnick. But here's the psychological layer underneath that label that actually matters. Your brain has an unusually high sensitivity to novelty reward signals. Every time you encounter a new domain, your prefrontal cortex lights up like a slot machine hitting 3 cherries. You're not addicted to starting things, you're addicted to the feeling of becoming. The moment something stops requiring you to grow, your nervous system treats it like stale air and quietly opens a window. That's not lack of discipline. That's a hyperactive growth drive wearing the costume of distraction. But here's where it gets interesting. The world spent the last 100 years building systems specifically designed to punish you for this. Schools rewarded narrow specialization. Resumes demanded linear career paths. LinkedIn asked you to pick one title and commit to it like it was a marriage. The entire post-industrial economy was engineered around the I-shaped person, someone who goes very deep in one vertical. And if you're sitting here feeling like you've never quite fit that mold, congratulations. You were never supposed to. Here's the part nobody talks about. There's a concept gaining serious traction in organizational psychology and workforce research called the M-shaped skill set. Unlike the I-shaped specialist who dominates one field, or even the T-shaped generalist who goes deep in one area with surface knowledge around it, the M-shaped person builds 2 or more genuine peaks of deep expertise, connected by a wide bridge of interdisciplinary thinking. And that bridge, that's where you live. That connecting tissue between your interests isn't wasted energy. It's pattern recognition that specialists can't access because they never left their lane long enough to see what the other lanes were doing. The person who studied behavioral economics and graphic design sees something in a marketing campaign that neither the economist nor the designer sees alone. That's not scattered. That's stereoscopic vision. So let's be clear about something. You're not someone who couldn't commit. You're not someone who got distracted. You are someone whose brain was collecting signal from multiple frequencies simultaneously, while the world kept telling you to tune into just one station. Every interest you abandoned taught you something. Every pivot you made left a residue of skill, vocabulary, and mental models that are now quietly stacked inside you like a library that nobody gave you credit for building. You didn't lose those years, you compounded them. And this changes everything. A 2023 analysis published in Nature Human Behavior found that the most impactful scientific discoveries of the last 2 decades came disproportionately from researchers who had crossed disciplinary boundaries at least once in their careers. Not the deepest specialists, not the broadest generalists, the crossers. In cognitive science, this is linked to a concept called analogical reasoning, the ability to map the structure of one domain onto a completely different problem. It's how Velcro was invented by a guy studying burr hooks on a hiking trail. It's how the architecture of the internet borrowed from the structure of biological neural networks. Your brain does this constantly. Every time you make a weird connection between 2 things that don't belong together, that's not a random thought. That's analogical reasoning firing without your permission. It's one of the rarest and most economically valuable cognitive skills on Earth. But here's what this whole conversation is really about. Somewhere along the way, the multipotentialite, the person with too many interests, internalized a story. The story that depth equals worth, that if you didn't sacrifice everything for one thing, your effort doesn't count. That passion needs to be singular to be legitimate, and that story has been exhausting you. Because you've spent years trying to perform a kind of focus that isn't natural to you, forcing yourself into a shape that was drawn for someone else's brain. And every time you couldn't hold it, you called yourself undisciplined, you called yourself lost, you made the mismatch a character flaw instead of a design difference. Here's the reframe. Focus isn't the absence of multiple interests. Focus is the intentional deployment of them. The M-shaped future doesn't ask you to pick one thing. It asks you to stop treating your range as a liability and start treating it as architecture. Your next move isn't to narrow down, it's to connect up. Find the through line between your peaks. Find the problems that only someone standing at your particular intersection can see. Because that intersection, nobody else is standing there. You didn't arrive here by accident. You arrived here by accumulation. So the next time someone asks you, "But what do you really do?" you don't have to shrink. You don't have to apologize for the portfolio career, the zigzag résumé, the 5 hobbies, the 3 half-written businesses. You can simply say, "I'm building an M," and you've been building it longer than you realized. Now, if this hit something real for you, there's one more thing you need to hear. Because we haven't talked yet about why multipotentialites almost always self-sabotage right before their biggest breakthrough. There's a specific psychological pattern. It has a name, it's well documented, and once you see it, you'll recognize it in every fresh start you've ever made. That's the next video. And if any part of this one felt true, that one's going to be uncomfortable in the best possible way.